This is an old story. It's been passed down from generation to generation. It's about an old preacher man that had boarded a train, making his way home from revival meeting. He found himself seated beside of a young man, and he tried to make conversation. He remarked something about the weather, but he noticed the young man never spoke a word. In a moment, the old preacher noticed a tear as it began to run down that young man's face. He leaned over and put his arm around him. He said, "Son, I'm a preacher of the gospel. Is there anything that I might do to help?" That young man said, "Yes, preacher. I've just got to talk to somebody. For you see, about 2 years ago, I got real mean. Why, preacher, I stooped so low that I cursed my mom and I struck my old gray-haired dad. Dad said, 'Well, son, if that's the best you can do, you'll just have to leave home.' So, preacher, I left. For about 2 years now, I've done about everything you could possibly call wrong. But, preacher, the other night at an old-fashioned revival meeting, I walked down that aisle and gave my heart and life to Jesus Christ. I asked God to save me. As soon as I got up from that old altar, the first thing I thought about was my dear old mom and dad. Oh, how I wanted to see them. I wanted to go back home. I wanted them to forgive me." The old preacher said, "Well, son, how will you know if mom and dad will forgive you?" The young man said, "Well, preacher, as long as I can remember, we've lived in a little house out by these railroad tracks. Out in our backyard stands a big old apple tree. I sat down and wrote mom and dad a letter. I told them I'd be coming home on this train. If they could just possibly find it in their heart to forgive me, just to tie one white rag in that old apple tree. If I saw it, I'd get off. But if I didn't, I'd just keep on going." Oh, it got deathly quiet. The young man began to cry even harder. He said, "Preacher, we're almost there, and I can't bear to look. Would you look for me?" The old preacher said, "Yes, son, I'll look. I'll be your eyes." And as he leaned over and wiped the steam from the old train window, why, a half-blind man could have seen that old apple tree. Why, it looked like it was in full bloom. There wasn't just one white rag tied there. It must have been at least 100. Out under that old apple tree was a gray-haired mom and dad. And in between them, they was waving a white bed sheet, just as high as they could possibly wave it. The old preacher said he could almost hear them say, "Welcome home, son. Welcome home." Aren't you glad tonight that there's a loving God that stands with outstretched arms of love and mercy and forgiveness, that's willing to receive us when we'll just come home and ask for forgiveness?